Welcome to the show. My name is Natalie, where we talk all things sales, marketing, and how to win the game. Today, I have a very hot topic that is special, and it's going to hit home with a lot of people, inspire you to honestly go out and make some moves. But there's no one better to be here with than Greg Ross himself, who has over 2 decades of professional sales training and coaching experience. But since we have such a special topic, I'm going to spoil it real quick. Okay, we are going to be talking about what does it take to be a top performer in sales. And I don't think that there's any better way to kick this off than hearing Greg's story. If you haven't heard Greg's story before, it is something that will move you and inspire you and truly make you believe that you are qualified to take action no matter where you are in your life, and that you can have the life that you desire to live. So, Greg, there's no better way to pass it off than right now. Would you mind kicking this thing off with your story?
Yeah. Hey, what's up, Natalie? Hey guys, what's going on? It's Greg Ross. I'm happy to share my story. And I think like as we're talking about what it takes to be a top performer in sales, it's really important, right, to talk about our stories, because I really believe, and I've interviewed tons of salespeople, tons of XDRs over the course of my career, that the top performers are those who have good stories. And I think we all have a good story, but sometimes we just need to learn how to tell it and how to tap into that. So yeah, for myself personally, I mean, when I was a kid, we didn't have a lot of money. We lived in a 400 square foot lime green colored shack out in the middle of nowhere in Eastern Oregon State. And it was cold in the wintertime and it was hot in the summertime. And my dad didn't really have a job. I think he fixed the pipes under the house so we could afford to stay there. And it just was like a very humble kind of beginning to my story. And that always kind of stuck with me. I never had a college degree. I didn't have an opportunity to kind of get those advantages in my life, but I wanted to make something of myself. And I found a way to do that using sales as a vehicle and by, achieving success in sales. So I'm very passionate about it and helping other people achieve that too.
Yeah. And I feel every time I listen to your story, and I'm going to poke at it a little bit more because there's so many inspiring aspects about it that I really would love people who tune into our show to hear. But I've heard this quote from somebody before. It says, "You are most qualified to help person that you once were in your life." And so for people sitting on here and they don't know where to start in your sales journey, or maybe, you're somewhere, you're in it and you're climbing over the mountain. Your story, you went through something for such a important reason. And I'm so excited for this. But Greg, I would really like to kind of dive a little bit deeper into it, because there's something really cool about yours that, you mentioned that you don't have a college degree. That's not how you got your start. You told me one time that you actually went, and it started while you were in a bank, right? That's kind of how you got your first gig.
Yeah, it's an interesting story. So I was not, well behaved in my late teens and early 20s. So I had a little bit of a rocky start in life. That's another thing about me too, right? And when I was in my 20s, I had this kind of like born again heart change moment where I completely changed my life, and I'm very thankful for that. And there's been a lot of blessings that came along with that. I remember when I was in my 20s, I walked into a bank one day and I saw a gentleman working there who was about my age, and he had a Marine Corps pin on his suit jacket. And I started a conversation with him, and we were talking about how, he had been a combat Marine and he was now working at the bank as a teller. And I was kind of surprised. And I said, "Why don't you have a job, doing something more similar to what you did in the Marine Corps?" And he said, "Greg, it's really, really difficult for veterans like myself to find meaningful employment when we get discharged out of the military." So that kind of like triggered this little light bulb moment for me, and caused me to start kind of looking a little bit deeper into that. And at the time, I had been working kind of some security jobs, had a little bit of security experience. That's what you do when you don't have a college degree. Just kind of getting started in life, right? So I thought, wow, there must be a job that would be more suitable for this guy who has received millions of dollars worth of government training than standing at the bank being a teller.
Yeah.
So it was kind of interesting. This light bulb kind of went off. And at the time, this was when terrorism was a really hot button issue. The shipping ports were actually being talked about a lot, how vulnerable they were, right? You have these big ships that come into the ports, and they're a stone's throw away from downtown, and you don't know who the people working on these ships are. So it's possible for them to sneak off and do anything, right? So I found out there were security companies that were down at the ports that were working on these ships, just keeping an eye on the crews, making sure that if people didn't have like a visa to enter the country, they weren't sneaking off the ship in the middle of the night and sneaking things, into downtown or whatever.
Right.
So I got a job working undercover for one of these companies. Actually, this is my distinguished security.
This is where really that's crazy. I never knew that you were undercover. This is like a whole nother side of you.
Yeah, because I wanted to start my own business, but I didn't want anyone to know that, right? And I also, at the same time, I wanted to see if it was possible to even do, right? So I spent a couple of weeks working night shifts out on these ships, right, in freezing cold temperatures with like 3 coats on and doing these jobs. And I realized that the people that were doing this work were friends of the guys that had founded these companies, and they didn't have any special qualifications or background or criteria. They just were friends of his, and they were making $25 an hour standing on these ships, keeping an eye on the crew, which was pretty good money back then, right? I know.
Yeah, absolutely. There's a lot of people right now that I think would still like to make $25 an hour. So back then, I'm sure that's amazing.
Yeah, right. I mean, just to, basically work a security shift. So that's when I had this moment where I was like, okay, I can do this. I can get some of these contracts. And so I went on Craigslist, which, man, that's really going to like age me,
That
right?
shows age so easily.
So back in the day, that's how if you had a company, that's how you hired people, right? You put an ad out on Craigslist and people would respond and send you their resume. So I put an ad out on Craigslist saying that I wanted to start a company doing that. And overnight, I got 360 something resumes from combat veterans that had been in the Marines, the Army, the Air Force, the Coast Guard, the Navy. I got resumes from Special Forces veterans, from Navy SEALs, from pararescue people in the Air Force, special operations people, Rangers. Like I just got all of these resumes,
Was your
and it
mind
was
blown? Were you just, did you wake up the next morning and first off, finding this, what a golden opportunity. I think first off, we're always looking around for things and we're like, wow, I would love to find something, and you really identified such an amazing opportunity somewhere. But with all that, and then you wake up the next morning to all of these resumes, I mean, were you mind blown?
I was, and I thought like, okay, I've got something here, right? There's a lot of people interested in this. So how do I take these people? Now, this is what happens in business when you start a business. I call it the chicken and egg scenario, right? You can't get a contract until you have the employees, but you can't get the employees until you have a contract, right? So it's like a paradox. It's really actually very difficult to get past that first step in business. So what I did was I got creative and I sent an email out to like all 360 of these people. And I said, we're going to have some testing and some free training. If you're interested in working for us, come out to this, event, show up, we'll meet you, and we'll do some training and assess your skills and see if you're, basically buying myself time to find a contract and also at the same time getting somewhat of a team ready that I, have talked to and feel comfortable working with.
Right.
And Natalie, it was amazing. The first night we had a training event, more than 360 people showed up. They were inviting their friends, and it was just crazy. And but it was a blast. I got to meet a lot of great people. And then through a lot of just door knocking and literally showing up at these shipping companies and at the port, I finally got the call and somebody was willing to hire us to do a contract. It was like a $12,000 contract, but
Yeah.
I had a team of people willing to work it. And we officially kicked things off. And it wasn't too much later that I secured a $1 million contract with the Coast Guard. It was my first
Amazing.
like big contract. And so I actually negotiated and signed my first $1 million contract while I was in my 20s.
I mean, I honestly, I don't even know how to respond to that because it's such a story that I think it's one of those, like when you hear it, you're just like, what? Especially, that's why I felt like it was so important for you to start at the beginning and then really talk about, you identified a spot, there was a need for it, and you took action. And that's a lot of what today is about. It's about taking action. And so that's phenomenal, first off. I mean, it's what a story. But from there, how long did it take you to really kind of get into the software. Did you automatically start off like in the software sales field, or can you kind of lead us in there and then we can dive
Yeah.
into being a top performer?
Yeah, not really, right? So I think there's a lot of people that can relate to this, but I wasn't born wanting to get into sales. Like I didn't see that happening for me in my life. And actually, I think there's a lot of young people that are in college or just graduate high school. If you ask them what they want to do with their life, nobody says sales, right? It's just like this unknown thing. But I decided that, I was going to pursue my own business, and I bootstrapped a multi-million dollar company from nothing. I mean, from zero. And so, I got to this point where the recession hit back in 2008, 2010, sometime
Hmm.
around there.
Yep.
And it just absolutely wiped out my business. I tried getting creative. I tried pivoting. I tried doing all these things, but literally overnight, the government contracts dried up. The shipping industry was hit really hard. The price of oil went through the roof. And it just turned into an unsustainable thing where I knew that I was going to have to make a life transition. And I thought, what can I do? Right? I have no college degree. I know how to work hard. I'm intelligent, but that's it. I have that foundation to build off of. So a good friend of mine said, hey, why don't you, I just got a job working in tech sales as an SDR, sales development rep, making cold calls, right? Sending emails. My friend's name was Lou. And Lou, if you're watching this, hey, much love to you for hooking me up with my first opportunity in tech sales. But I basically got involved in tech sales as an SDR. He put in a good word for me. I got hired and started at the bottom, making cold calls, sending emails, just trying to set appointments for the sales team for a company that was based outside the United States, but had a sales office in the city where I lived at the time.
Wow. I mean, but it's adapt or survive. But I don't know if you realize this, and I'm sure you do now, but a lot of the things you had negotiated a contract with the government, you had put together a team, and you had you had to have communication skills in order to be able to pull all that off before. And so it's crazy how applicable all these traits that you had were into this new, field of experience that you were taking on. And so once you got into sales and you got going, you're doing the cold calling, you're doing the email. How long was it before you decided you're like, I'm going all in? And what does that mean? What does it really mean when you say I want to go all in? I want to be a top performer. Was there like a moment that you were just like, I'm going for this, or how did that work for you?
Yeah, so I think when I became an SDR, the annual compensation, the on-target earnings was like 55K, right?
Okay.
if you're doing a good job and it was uncapped, right? Which is a magical word in sales.
Mhm.
The commission was uncapped. So I figured out really quickly, like I need to book as many meetings as possible because I got a little bit in base pay, but mostly, compensation from booking meetings for the sales team. So I just put my entire focus to figuring this thing out. And with no background, I remember I was so starstruck and I was so impressed when I walked into the office and I saw how intelligent and just like really the talent and the potential that these people who were sales development reps had. I was blown away. So I'm learning a new game. Nobody wants to talk about what they're doing that's working at the time because those were closely guarded secrets. So you have to also build friendships and trust. And, I just basically started learning, reading books, reading articles, talking to top performers, learning their secrets, and basically creating for myself a sales development playbook that I could follow to get results. And it was an amazing time. I had a lot of trial and error. I have some like incredibly memorable moments. I hit a fever pace of like booking meetings. I was on top of the stack ranks. I was innovating on LinkedIn, trying to figure out how to get more people to connect with me. I innovated a little bit too hard. I ended up getting like suspended from LinkedIn for 2 weeks.
But how bad do you want it? That's what it
Oh,
really is. Like you're going. When I asked you if you were going all in, you're like, I went so hard, I got blocked on LinkedIn.
yeah, not just me, but the whole office got put on notice from LinkedIn because of the fact that I was grinding so hard on LinkedIn. I probably spiked some report somewhere. So
Well,
uh,
we asked what I mean. If you want to be a top performer, like what are you doing? And that's it. I mean, you just went hard. That's
that's
what it
part
is.
of it. Yeah, you have to work harder. It's sweat equity, right? So you have to work harder or be willing to work harder than anybody else. And listen, Not everybody is, right? And I get it. But for me, I really wanted to get back to my former glory, right? I had been making six figures as a business owner in my 20s, and I wanted to get back to that lifestyle. Like that was very important to me. So
So you were
I,
hungry.
I
That's
was,
what I hear. You were hungry and you had a desire to learn, and you wanted that. It's not so much like it wasn't just the salary itself. It was the lifestyle and the things you get from growing as a
yeah,
person and in that profession. So with that being said, what does it take to be a top performer? And I feel like that could be a pretty like a broad question that I'm asking you. But I think already identifying that you have to be hungry, and it's more than just the dollar sign, it's the lifestyle there, it goes beyond that.
that's
What
right.
does it really take to be a top performer?
Yeah, so there's like 3 or 4 key areas that I think are really distinguishing characteristics of top performers, right? And I actually watched a really interesting show, and I heard this guy Mark Dacascos talking about his career as a like international kung fu champion, right? So
Wow.
he's a black belt in the martial arts, and he said something that really struck me. He said, "A black belt is really just proof that you've mastered the fundamentals." He said, all that that means is that you've learned the letters of the alphabet and you can now put them together and start making sentences, right? And that really stuck with me because I'll tell you what, that's very similar to sales. There are certain fundamental skills that you learn in sales that you combine and you put together and you master. And once you get that broad kind of firm foundation of the fundamentals, you kind of earn your black belt in sales. And when I got into sales as an SDR, we were classically trained on how to write our own emails, right? We didn't like have all these silver bullet scripts floating around on LinkedIn that we could copy and
How
paste.
nice today, right? Just all
No.
the
Yeah.
quick downloads, right? I would
Yeah.
okay. So then can I ask you, because I feel like this is a great opportunity to you. So before you had mentioned that it was a lot of trial and error. And I don't think people realize probably how much work really goes into a lot of trial and error, especially
Oh,
when
yeah.
you're literally being asked to pretty much craft all of your own stuff and figure it out yourself. Like, how bad do you want it? But with today, there are so many resources at the tip of people's fingertips. Do you almost feel like it's just as challenging having all these silver bullets at people's fingertips, where honestly it may actually set them back? What are your thoughts on that? And you may want to clarify what a silver bullet is too for some.
Yeah. Yeah, let me clarify that. So if you know me or you follow me on LinkedIn, you'll see me talk a lot about silver bullets, and I usually put a little wolf emoji next to it because silver bullets are it's an age-old joke about killing werewolves with a silver bullet. So that what I mean by that is somebody will say, "Here's an email script that got me 1,000 meetings in 90 days," right? And comment, quick question if you're interested. And so you get all of these SDRs and sales leaders and sales reps that start commenting, and they take this email template and they all use it. And then what happens is the prospects see it 5 billion times a day from everybody, right? It's not well written. It's very templated and generic usually. It's full of gimmicks. And then, the Googles of the world get tired of it because then they decide to take action with their anti-spam laws. And so it actually ruins the sales game. But the better way to do it is actually to learn how to write emails and communicate the value of what you're selling and why it matters to them, right? Which is a skill that has to be learned. You don't wake up in the morning just with this innate ability to write sales emails, right? So
No,
that's
where would you start though? So obviously you have emails. Do you just start? Did you just start identifying components and structures within like your emails? What did it take? Because obviously we know we established like you were hungry, and so what did you do at that time to ace the fundamentals for someone who's listening and maybe they don't have a mentor or someone who's really helping them to get to that next step, but they're hungry? What was it that you did that helped you identify so you could go up to that next level?
Yeah, so there's one thing really that makes a big difference there, and that's being what I call a student of the business, right? So back in the day, we used to read articles and like research the companies we were reaching out to. We weren't necessarily sending 3,000 emails. We were picking some good targets. We were researching their challenges, understanding how our solution would solve those challenges. And then we also would research their role and understand what they do from day to day and how they're personally measured. And and what they're interested in and their authority level and influence level. So the number one thing that I can recommend if you're new in sales or you've been in sales a while, but you're missing that certain something to make you a top performer, spend a little bit of time each day being a student of the business and learn about your industry, learn about the common challenges, learn about your prospect organizations, watch their YouTube videos, go to their website, read their blogs, right? Like actually study and be a student of the business. When you do that, then you'll start to get an idea of how the value you provide is going to solve challenges. And I've said it a million times, Natalie. I'm sure you're tired of hearing it. Nobody wakes up in the morning wanting to buy software. They wake up in the morning wanting to solve challenges in their business.
I mean, it's phenomenal. And it really is. It's all about being a continuous learner. And I think that's applicable across the board, no matter what profession you're in. Listening to this, if you're coming across it, being dedicated to being a continuous learner in any field it's so important. So with that, so taking and being a continuous learner, being able to analyze things and being willing to wake up and grow every single day, that takes a certain level of commitment. What else on top of acing the fundamentals can you add on to that and build so people can, I really would love to hear just, I know that you went through your story, you made it sound so simple, but for the over 2 decades of just an amazing resume that Greg has built up, his experience, he's coached a lot of people and has made a huge impact. So what is another aspect, a cornerstone that you can add on to acing the fundamentals and continuing to be a student of the game?
Yeah, so being a student is one thing, but there's a little cheat there that will help you really be more effective at figuring out how to work smarter, right? I call this the golden rule, actually. Find a way to work smarter. And once you figure that out, then be the hardest working smart person in the room, right? You've heard that old saying, work smarter, not harder. Well, that's not true. In sales, it's both. You have to figure out a way to work smarter, then be the hardest working smart person in the room, right? So there's a technique called drafting. And I don't know if you've ever watched any like bicycle races, triathlons, right? So there's this technique where like a bicyclist will get right up behind the person in front of them, right? And there's a little air pocket that actually propels them a little bit so they don't have to work as hard. They don't have to pedal as fast. They don't have to burn as many calories, right? And a lot of times people will draft until the last couple of feet of the race and then they'll try to scoot around and pass to get the win, right? So
yes. So can I tell you, when I think of drafting, this may really just, I don't even know what this will say about me, but like I think of NASCAR and it's the same concept.
Yeah,
You're
yes,
drafting and right at the last minute you go around and it's go time. And so is that
that's right.
you're throttling and you're going around at the last minute? Is that kind of how that works?
So kind of. So what you're doing is you're actually using the learning curve of the people in front of you to get ahead. So here's what I recommend doing. If you're getting a sales job with an organization, figure out who the 10 top performers are or 5 top performers, right? Hit them up, invite them out for a cup of coffee, pay for their coffee. It's the best investment you're ever going to make, right? I know everybody's running out of cash right now, but pay for their coffee and then ask them like about what they're doing that's working and take notes, right? A lot of times you can draft off of their success. You can figure out what they've done that's worked really well, or a certain way they position the product, or a certain thing that they say, or an email that they're using that works really, really well. It's different from a gimmick that you find on LinkedIn because this is a specific email that they've used to close deals, right? And to book appointments in your specific industry with your specific product to your specific buyers. That's tremendously valuable. So there's a way that you can kind of draft behind the top performers and use them to actually cut down your learning curve. And if you're serious about being a top performer and you start a sales job and you don't take the top performers out for coffee, you're really missing something big.
Oh, there's so much information just around you in general and who you put yourself around and learning from people and their experiences. And especially just sitting down for a cup of coffee that even if you're going to somewhere like Starbucks where it's now like $7 or something for a coffee,
$15 now, right?
it's maybe a little bit more. I don't even know. But that cup of coffee could be the best investment that you ever make because you're sitting down, you're listening to some
Yes.
experiences and what's helped them. And I don't know if there's ever I truly believe that we are all our own secret sauce. The things that we add to it simply just supplement who we are and what we bring to the table and the value, but their own experience. I mean, being able to listen to somebody else and be a sponge and like really learn. again, it kind of builds off of the first thing. It's learning the fundamentals and being committed to being a continuous learner. But
That's right.
that's a brilliant, that's amazing advice. So um,
Natalie, something amazing happens too when you do that, right? When you show up and you figure out a way to work smarter, and then you're the hardest working person in the room, right? So you're constantly on top of the activity stack rank. You're constantly asking people, you're curious, right? You're asking people what they're doing that's working. You're taking the top performers out for coffee. Something happens there also behind the scenes where the sales leaders will find out that that's what you're doing. They'll get feedback that you were asking a lot of good questions. They'll see you on top of the stack rank constantly. And it also does a great job of building your personal brand, right? Which I think is really important. You want to get that recognition as someone who's not afraid to work hard, someone who's trying to figure out the best way to play the game. And you'll find that when you do that, it attracts all of this attention and support from the sales leaders too.
I love that. It's literally, it's making things work in your favor by putting in the work. And I feel like that's probably a lot of what becoming a top performer takes. It's putting in the work. I mean, you just said being committed to really go to that next level. So with that being said, so learning from other people around you, what
Mhm.
else? What else can you kind of offer people some advice? I mean, I'm over
Yeah.
here. I'm already speechless because there's just so many things you can say about the two things that you've already mentioned already.
Yeah. So one of the things that I recommend is making a plan for yourself, right? You don't want to just kind of wing it every day when you're in sales. It's like being an athlete, right? You have to have a plan for each day. Either you're training or you're playing the game or you're whatever it is, you're in the off season. You got to figure out how you're planning your day. So what I recommend that people do is create like a weekly plan for yourself, know what you're doing each day. When are you doing your prospecting? Because certain times and certain days are better than others. When are you jumping on sales calls with people? When are you doing research into accounts you're reaching out to? When are you meeting with your partners on the sales team that help you? And really have a plan, right? Not just a plan for how you're, time management, but have an activities plan. So I also recommend that you really learn your funnel. You understand, like, okay, how many cold calls does it take for me to get a meeting? And how many meetings does it take for me to get a closed won deal? If you can start to understand those conversion rates and percentages, then really sales becomes a math equation. And you can reverse that from your quota if you're mediocre, or you can reverse that from the amount of money that you want to make, right? Really, because if your commission's uncapped, you can make however much money you want in sales. So that's really another thing that top performers do. They figure out what those conversion rates are. And they're called a close number, as I call it. How many activities does it take for me to get that closed won deal? And then they reverse engineer that and they win the game. It's a numbers game, but not necessarily activities. It's conversion rates that are important.
I was about to say, well, and then you start wondering too, there's a whole nother aspect to it is how can I make my conversion rate better? And that only betters you as well. And again, that goes back into building upon those like fundamentals. But once you identify what your funnel is and you learn more about it and you figure out what your conversion rate is, then you want to take it one more notch up and you want to learn what can you do to be better to make that conversion rate better.
Yeah.
It's a process. It literally it's working your plan. And that's brilliant, like absolutely. You
That's
said
all it
it
is. That's
amazing.
all it is. And the commitment to that plan is important. So sometimes you got to put your headphones on. One of the biggest psychological barriers for me being in sales was sitting there listening to all these other people winning all the time.
I was just about to ask you how does that affect, I mean, all of it as well, because it's competitive.
Yeah, it is competitive. And for me personally, like, especially when I was starting out in sales, it was a little intimidating because you hear people winning all the time. You haven't won, right, yet, or you're figuring it out or whatever, or even you're behind some of the others. That can fuel you, but it can also be a little bit discouraging. So
The
there's
mindset.
there's times when you put your headphones on, you put your head down, and you focus on your plan and you work it. And then you'll be amazed when you pop your head back up and take your headphones off, you're back in front again, like on top of the stack rank. So really focus on working your plan, block time, and actually be committed to that. Don't let distractions happen. And you'll go far in sales if you just make a plan and work your plan.
Absolutely. So, okay, during that, let's dive into that part a little bit deeper. So, when you are working on your plan, you have your head put down. At that time, if you can, when you're grinding at that point, because that's what you're doing. I mean, there's a lot of work going in
Yeah.
behind scenes there. Is it for you personally? What fueled you to be a top performer? Was it just being at the top? Was it just the salary? Because there's got to be something in that when you're working really hard towards something, there's got to be something that fuels you during that time. What was that for you?
Yes. Yeah, that's a great question. So for me, it's changed a little bit over time. Initially, my why was I really wanted to get back to my former glory, right? I wanted to find a way to make six figures again in sales. And so I got promoted quickly. I doubled my quota. I sold small market, mid market, enterprise level. I became an enterprise hunter. And I really, made a lot of money in sales. I remember like making huge purchases off of one commission check. And that's really thrilling and exciting. But I think you actually, if you plan to be a top performer and you want to run the marathon of sales and you want to make a lot of money, most of the people I've met that are doing that have a strong personal why. So they have something inside of them, a personal reason, a motivation. I'll give you a few examples. I talked to one sales development rep. Her dream, she was born outside of the US. Her dream was someday to come back to her home country and create a nonprofit to help people there. And every single day, like she had that written on a Post-it note, and that was the lens through which she viewed everything, right? I met an account executive whose sister passed away, and she every day would show up to work and do this job for her sister and knock it out of the park for her sister, right? Those are very strong personal motivations. I met another account executive whose father was a high-powered businessman and always told him he couldn't make it in business and he couldn't be successful. And he's like, I just want to prove him wrong. I want to get those big commission checks and show him that I can do it, right? These are the kind of things that will motivate you to push through the rejection, the no's, the discouragement, all the challenging headwinds that come, with a career in sales and help you to be successful. So I think that's where it has to start. And if you don't know what your why is, you really need to spend some time thinking about the experiences you've had in your life and what motivates you personally at a personal level.
It's that it's that intrinsic motivation. It's figuring out, even if you're not sure what your why is, it's thinking about, okay, well, why do I want my life to look like in 10 to 20 years? Okay, why do I want it to look like that?
Yeah,
Why do I want it to
right.
look like that? Oh, okay. And it's taking it deeper and deeper. And that's what it comes down to. It comes down to those experiences where, you have with your dad, or you're working hard for your sister or a family member. And it always does come back down to something like that. You just kind of have to unpeel the layers of what you really, really want. And that's what I think is so beautiful about your story is, I mean, you really, really created the life that you wanted to live in, and you still are. I mean,
Yes.
you
Oh, yeah.
still are to this day, and you're still a continuous learner. So for
Yes.
the people out there wanting to be a top performer, um, outside of all of the amazing tips and the things that you shared with us today, if you could really just give them a solid piece of advice, is there anything else that you would want to add on to what you already mentioned?
I think that there's no better feeling than when you make your dreams a reality and you can use sales as a vehicle to do that. I mean, I basically retired at 41. So, I had a grind since I was in my early 20s in business. I used my talents, God-given talents of being able to work hard and being intelligent to make myself successful. And I let my dreams motivate me. And that really taught me a lot, not just about sales, but about life. And I think there's a lot of salespeople out there who their dream is not to be in sales their whole life, right? They have something else that they want to accomplish, the dream that's in their mind. And they use sales as a vehicle. So my why now has changed a little bit than it was when I was in my 20s. Because I believe that there are people out there that have greatness within them and that greatness can be unlocked using sales as a vehicle. I have dedicated my life to helping people achieve greatness for themselves. That's a very powerful why for me. And I keep in touch with a lot of my students. If you're out there and you've been a student of mine, hey, what's up? But I keep in touch with a lot of them and I hear stories from them and they're getting promoted. They're achieving things in their life. Their dreams are coming true. And it makes me so happy. So that's truly what motivates me now. And it's a beautiful thing because I figured out a way to use sales to change people's lives, right? And
It's
It's
so
no
much
longer about
bigger picture.
yeah,
Yeah.
it's no longer about selling. It's about changing your life. And I'll tell you, if you have that dream, it's possible. It's possible to achieve your dreams using sales. And if that's you and you want to do that, let's do it. Let's get it on. Let's be a top performer. The only thing stopping you is your own barriers that you put in your own mind. That's it.
I love it. With that being said, you do coach people, so you want to tell people a little bit about that because I feel like this is the perfect opportunity. As I mentioned before, you guys, if whether this is the first time you're watching this show or you are repeating and you are hooked on us now, welcome back. But Greg is a amazing coach, and he is. We just heard him. He's in it to transform lives, and that comes with honestly evolving and being a continuous learner. So can you want to tell people a little bit more about coaching and if
Yeah.
somebody wants more?
I would love to. I would love to. So, if you found your head nodding along to the music as I was talking about people achieving their dreams, then I want to talk to you about that. I think that you can do it. It's possible. And I know all the tips and tricks to help you get where you want to be. So, if you go to my website, I founded a company called Phantom Sales. If you go to my website, it's phantom-sales.com. We'll put
And
a
we'll
link
link
in.
that in well, don't worry, you guys. We'll put it in the description. So if you go down, you click see more in the description, you'll see everything that Greg is talking about. I'm going to come in, it'll be fully loaded for you. So anything he mentions here,
Awesome.
shortcoming, will be right below.
Yeah, so come to my website and there's a little button to book an initial session with me. It's complimentary. We spend 30 minutes talking, and I would like to spend that 30 minutes talking about your dream and what motivates you. And once we're done having that conversation, I can lay out a training plan for you that will help you achieve your dream through sales. And so I invite you to come there. Obviously, I'm on YouTube, I'm on LinkedIn, I'm on TikTok now. So I'm
You
everywhere. I've
are
got,
on TikTok. You guys, it is entertaining. I'll tell you that. Every different platform is a whole different space. And like
yes,
I said, it is your lucky day because I'm linking it all below. And I'm also linking something else. Greg has been nice enough to share this really cool freebie, his top rep checklist. Tell people a little bit more about that because it's something they do not want to miss out.
yeah, so I just outlined the 5 or so areas that I've noticed top performers typically excel in, and a little bit of information about why those areas are important and the types of results that they could potentially get you. So when you're thinking about how you're playing your game, take an honest look at it. We'll put it in the description and stack yourself up against my top rep checklist and see if there's room for improvement in your game.
Awesome. I feel like as we're wrapping this show up, we hit so many aspects about growth and evolving and leveling up your game and mindset too. It was amazing. Thank you so much, as always, for hopping on here with me again. And you guys, if you have not yet, make sure you hit subscribe. We drop new episodes weekly, sometimes a little bit more frequently than that. We have
Mhm.
lots of content out there on YouTube. So hit subscribe so you can see more of us, hear more value, and make sure you check out everything below. Hit Greg up on social media. He will talk back. You will talk with him, right? You'll connect back with him.
Absolutely. Yeah, I'm looking forward to hearing from you guys. And thank you, Natalie, for having me on. It was really fun. I enjoyed it.
Me too. Thank you. All right, guys. We will see you next time. As always, this is the show where we talk all things sales, marketing, and how to win the game. Bye.
Bye, guys.